Hello, friends, and welcome to yet another episode of Pastor Mike's Quick Shots. We are currently on episode 238, and we are working our way through the month of May right now. You might go back and watch this later and be like, when was that? That was in May that we were doing episode 238. Just after Easter, and we are in a season of learning about multiplication. Now, again, I am not a mathematician. No one will accuse me of being able to help my son with his trigonometry homework right now. I cannot. I am not good at the higher level math. I am smart enough to figure out normal math, but I'm also the same guy that knows that I'm trying to tell you to go right, but I will say left. And I don't know why that is. Anyway, we are on multiplying. In this past week, we celebrated a wonderful Mother's Day. Thank you, moms, for all that you do for us and have done for us. And what it means to multiply throughout this unique thing we have as a family. So I go back to Genesis, because Genesis is where we pick up the core of what it is that God desires for this creation of his to do. One, he didn't want us to disobey him and go our own way, but we did. So we had to pay a price. Women, you were given the opportunity to bear children, although be it painfully. And men, we were set to toil all of our days, working constantly and never getting a break. In that, we were called to multiply and be fruitful. And I think that everybody thinks immediately that means that we were called to have children. Yes, that's part of the process, but we were called to multiply what it was that he created us to be. That is, people who were in relationship with him. So when we were called to multiply, we were to bear children, make children, raise children, have children of our own that we would train up and raise as followers of this one true God. And it's when we fall short of that the family seems to fall apart. I can't say that's the only reason, but it's a pretty big one. It's a pretty strong reason. There are some families, though, that do fall apart, even though they are following God, and they think they're doing everything exactly the way God wanted them to do it. But in all reality, we have to understand that this family unit is where we emulate most the relationship that we have with our God, and then relate that to our family, and that we then relate with each other. Let's go back to, it's a similar passage, right? The passage that we used was from Ephesians, but Paul, very much about this family, even though he never had one of his own, Paul very much is about this family relationship and this family dynamic. In Colossians chapter 3, he's also writing to another church, verses 18 through 21, he says this: wives, submit to your husbands, as is fitting for those who belong to the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. Children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged. I think when we look at that text, there are so many people that want to pull out that just verse 18. Wives, submit to your husbands. Oh, your wife isn't submissive to you. That's not biblical. Well, it is, because the very next sentence, though, it says that husbands are supposed to love our wives and never treat them harshly. The fact is, you're both to submit to each other. You're to love them as Christ loved the church. You're to love them as God intended for you to love each other from the jump. You should be submitting to each other in reality. Children, this verse about the children, always obey your parents. I know sometimes that's hard, and sometimes they don't tell us the right thing, but we should obey them. They might know more than we know. And so we might want to make sure that we're obeying what it is that our parents are trying to teach us in this moment. And then fathers, mothers, don't aggravate your children. Don't bind them up. Don't, be so discouraging that they despise you. there is a balance between discipline, following orders, and then just being a harsh dictator, right? I think that God shows grace, and I think we need to show our children grace. I don't know. I probably spanked my kids when they were little, but I doubt they even remember it. But I know that they respected my authority and I had their best interest in mind. Now, they did not always obey that best interest, but they tried. And now I find myself raising kids that are good people. They're good human beings who follow God and want to follow God. And that doesn't just happen overnight. It also doesn't happen by letting them do whatever they want to do. If that's the case, then we all lose. We have this finite, this connected, enclosed, that might be the word I'm looking for, this enclosed expectation of what our family is. And when it falls outside of this perfect purview, we tend to lose it. We forget what it is, that we're not going to be perfect. I read a lot of James Merritt sermons this week, so be prepared. This one is the big picture, and he talks about expectations. We all have many expectations for our family. We want our kids to make straight A's, marry good-looking people, and have beautiful children. We want our husbands and dads to be successful, admired, and above all, cool. We want our wives and mothers to be a good cook, to keep a neat house, answer our every beck and call, and other than that, stay out of the way. More times than not, family members simply don't live up to those expectations. What happens to us in this family dynamic when expectations aren't met? We freak out about the smallest of things, and we forget that this home that we are making is supposed to be about God and about his great love for us. When I was thinking about these expectations and I was thinking about what it is that happens to the family, I started thinking about the many weddings that I've had the opportunity to officiate. And 1 Corinthians 13 always comes up. 1 Corinthians 13 is always a part of a wedding, or at least most of weddings it shows up. But how many times do we intend to base our marriage upon 1 Corinthians 13? How many times are we going to raise a family, to be a family together, and embody 1 Corinthians 13? Probably not as often as we'd like. And we have to give ourselves grace when we fall short of that. But this should be our standard. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7, read this way. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. I think we read those verses and we think, I can't possibly do all of that. I can't possibly embody every one of those things. And in all honesty, you and I, in our own strength, we can't. We are going to fail. When the trash didn't get taken out, or when the mistakes happen, or when the car gets wrecked, you name it, we tend to understand very quickly that we are human beings and we're flawed. Our biggest bet that we can make is that we are going to fail at those things. And yet, hopefully, we are giving as much grace to those members of our family as that we want to receive when we fall short. That way we'll understand how love is patient and love is kind, how it's not irritable, how it's not boastful, how it doesn't do all of the things that we don't want to do. Love never gives up. Love never fails. I think those are some of my greatest things that I can think about right now about my family. I know they're not perfect. I know they don't always believe what I believe. But the best thing I can do for my family is love them really well. treat them with as much kindness and admiration as I can, build them up and affirm their life, affirm their goodness in God, focus, hopefully pour back into their relationship with God. And hopefully they won't want to run from him. Hopefully they'll want to run to him. And if I can be a father, a parent, a son that causes people to run back into the arms of God, then I've probably done a pretty good job. James Merritt had another sermon called Love, the Happiness of a Godly Family. And he was talking about 1 Corinthians. When you see how love is described in 1 Corinthians, you realize that it has a spiritual dimension that you won't find in Hollywood movies, salacious novels, TV shows, or soap operas. Because real love is, and real love does. I want you to imagine, as you look at these qualities of love, how different your family would be if you loved your family in this way. So let's go back over them again. How would your family look if you were to try to be patient, kind, not jealous or boastful or proud or rude? How would your family look if you did not demand your own way? How would your family look if you were less irritable and if you didn't really keep any record of wrongs and one-upsmanship? How would your family look if you were not rejoicing about injustice, but you were rejoicing when truth wins? How would your family look if you were loving them in such a way that you never give up, you never lose faith, that you're always hopeful, and that you endure through every circumstance together? That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? That sounds like a family that I want to be a part of. And the thing that I think we also forget is that Paul is really writing to a Christian church. He's writing to a group of people who should already be followers of Christ and who should know these ways of grace and forgiveness and love. And yet we're flawed human beings. And so he's reminding them of who we can be, who we should be, who we could try to be. I was reminded very quickly of Cornelius. How many of you remember Cornelius in Acts chapter 10? Acts chapter 10. I want you to hear about how this Roman officer was described by Luke. In Acts chapter 10, verses 1 through 2, listen. In Caesarea, there lived a Roman army officer named Cornelius, who was a captain of the Italian regiment. He was a devout, God-fearing man, as was everyone in his household. He gave generously to the poor and prayed regularly to God. That is incredible. This was not a man who would have been known to be Jewish, let alone should be a follower of God. And yet here he is demonstrating to us, hopefully followers of Christ, what it means to be a follower of Christ. To love God and to have our whole household love God and to pray and to give to the poor. And that tells me all I need to know about Cornelius's character. He was good. In a godly sense, he was good. And he produced a healthy family. Friends, I'm not sure what your family situation looks like. And I'm not sure if you've had struggles with being raised by people who aren't godly. But that doesn't mean that this is where the generational curse continues, if you will. You have an opportunity today to change your life. I have an opportunity to change my life. I have an opportunity, just like you, to do better today for my family. I have an opportunity, this mission field that lives within the same four walls that I live in. They are my mission field. And if I'm not loving them with my whole heart, and I'm not giving them everything that I am, that's the first place that I'm going to fail. That's the first place that everything's going to fall apart, and everything else will fall apart after. I don't want to call it an argument, but I had a discussion with a professor in one of my seminary classes. And he said, "What's the most important thing you can do for your church?" And everybody's giving all these answers. Pray. We should be prayer warriors for our church. We should make sure that we go to the hospital every day and see everyone as much as we can. And I blurted out, I need to make sure that my family loves God. Well, don't they already love God? I go, yeah, but what if they don't? What if my lack of attention in their life causes them to drift? What if my failure to love them well causes them to fail and fall? I shouldn't be a pastor if that's the case. Friends, it doesn't matter if you're clergy, if you're an ordained pastor of a church. We're all called into ministry. And I have to say that our most important mission field is our family. I hope that you'll see that that's where multiplication starts. That's where multiplication begins. Right there at home. These people that you have at your disposal every day. They are the most important people in your life. And you should treat them as such. Friends, I hope that you'll join us. Man, we're going to keep going into this multiplication process. Now, there's a reason this week I called it multiplying gifts. Because gifts are everything that God has given you. And if you have the chance, I want you to stop and think about everything that God's given you before you get there. Because we're going to talk about everything that God provides, which in turn technically is everything. You'll find out when we get there. We're going to talk about what it means to let God multiply those things and use those resources well so they can grow and multiply. And it'll multiply his kingdom even. We're going to be at Quincy Methodist Church at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday, and we'll be at Cornerstone Fellowship of the Graph at 10:45. Hopefully, we won't have too much of a graduation hangover, that we are too involved and too many places to go, too many kids to wish well, and see off to college. Friends, I hope that you'll join us, that you're praying over those graduation ceremonies this weekend, and that we are present for those people that we love and care about. Friends, if you're able to, join me in this closing prayer. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for your great love. You have loved me with an everlasting love, and you demonstrated the depths of your love by sending Jesus to save me. I want to love my family members in response to the great love that you have poured out on me. I want my love to reflect your love. Please help me to love every member of my family. Help me to be patient, gracious, kind, and understanding. Help me to be more concerned with how I can serve them than how I can get what I want. I also ask that you would fill all the members of my family with love for one another. Let your divine love and peace cover our family. In Jesus' name, amen. Friends, I hope that you are having an incredible, amazing week. I hope that God is showing up in your family. I hope that he's showing up not just in your family, but in your private life through that family love that you're sharing and serving. Friends, this place that we are in is a place where we can cause this world to see more Jesus, or we can cause them to run from Jesus. And that should be all that we're trying to multiply. Do you see Jesus? Am I showing you who Jesus is? And if I am, and I'm probably doing a good job of finding him myself and being in relationship with him myself. Friends, have a great rest of your week. And I hope and I pray that you remember who the head of your household really is. It could be Jesus. Bye-bye, everybody.